So intentions versus goals. And the reason I chose this topic today is because in a lot of the work that I do and the talks that I'm giving, these two terms come up a lot. And I think we use them interchangeably, but they're very distinct. They're very different from one another. How many of you have done any kind of goal-setting workshops or goal-setting practices? Anybody? How many of you have set goals, but you didn't keep those goals? Right? How many kept the goals? Yes, good. And I think one of the biggest differences of whether you keep a goal or you don't keep a goal is the intention that you set. Right? Why did you create the goal? What was the intention of that process, that journey that you went on? And that's where we're going to start to dive into is see what is the difference between intentions and goals. I like to say that goals are the destination. It's the orientation we make. We go, okay, I'm starting here and I want to get there. My goal is to get there. But why? And that's the intention. The why is the intention of why do you want to get there? Why do you want to get to that place, that experience, that connection? And I think it's even the most important piece. The goal tends to be something that just orients, but it doesn't have to be the attachment. How many of you have gotten stuck where you have a goal and you've been holding it for years, but you're not really making progress on it? Anybody? And it's probably frustrating you, right? You start to get hard on yourself. You start to judge yourself. You're like, why don't I just do this? Why am I being so lazy? Why am I not getting this done? I used to have all these task lists. Actually, I still probably do, where I would make these task lists. And then the next day I would make a new task list, and I'd take like half of the ones from over here that I didn't do, and I'd transfer them over here. And then those half I would transfer to the next day and the next day. And there was always, at some point in my task list, at least 10 items that had just been getting transferred along, delayed, right? Procrastinated on. Until maybe a year had gone by, and I would look at the list, and I would have this thought. I'd go, you know, I don't even live in that city anymore. Why do I still have that? And that's when you can let it go. But we get stuck to our goals. And I think the reason we get stuck to our goals is because we put something that we wanted, a desire, a reward, something we wanted to experience or feel, as an attachment to the goal. Until I make it here, I can't be happy. Until I get there, or until I connect with the soulmate of my life, I can't find love. Until I get that job, I won't have enough. Until I get recognized by that person, I won't be enough. Any of these sound familiar to you guys? These are those internal whispers that are constantly hounding us and keeping us actually from remembering the intention of why we ever set the goal. Let's use love as an example. It's one of the things I love to talk about. My relationship with Christina, she and I, we do a lot of relationship coaching, and so we're constantly looking at the intention behind our action, the intention behind our connection, the intention behind everything that we do. And sometimes it's not nice to look at because some of those intentions are blind. The things that we are unconsciously acting out of. Have you guys ever made a decision or an action or behavior that was an unconsciously motivated one? And then as soon as you did it, you're like, oh, I think I know why I did that. And it's too late. You can't take it back, right? And so we start to understand the intentions of why we do things. And coming back to this idea of love. Why do we want relationships? I get clients all the time. They come to me. I have a healing center down the street. So people will come for either one-on-ones or group sessions or couple sessions with Christina and I. And one of the first things we always ask is, what do you want out of this, out of life, out of the relationship that you're seeking? And they'll start off sharing some stuff. They'll be like, well, I want somebody who's, and they'll make this beautiful picture that, you know, of the checklist they've made, of who they feel would be the perfect match, their soulmate, their twin flame. Actually, they often use those terms in this community. They're like, I'm just looking for my soulmate. I go, oh, great. Why? So that I'm not alone anymore. Oh. So you're not looking for something, you're running away from something. See the difference? Most of the times, the goals that we set, it's because we're running from something else. We're not really going towards the goal. That's going to hopefully land for a couple of you right now. You'll be like, oh, crap. That's true. And that's a game changer because the moment you realize that you've not been moving towards life, but you've been running away from it, you start to realize why maybe life hasn't been going your way. You know, we talk a lot, especially in conscious community, about alignment, coming into alignment with things. If you're running this way and life is going that way, not aligned. It's not that you have to find the perfect path and be like, okay, alignment, I'm on this narrow walkway. It's like these rice fields here, right? Ever walk these rice fields where it's like really narrow and you're like, don't want to fall in it looks mucky, there's ducks in there, right? It's not a narrow path. It's actually this wide, beautiful spectrum of all possibilities, but it's that way. Most of us are looking this way. And we're trying to affect change that way, which is your history, your past. Right? I was just having a coaching chat conversation with a client that she was talking about all this anxiety that she's got and all these different things that are going on, and that, you know, she knows that she can't change the past, but if she could only understand, if she could only change that one thing, even though she just said she couldn't change it. And I think a lot of us do this. We stay focused on some past event, some historical event, some experience from before, as if we could change it then, it won't happen again. But the problem is, if you're focused there, you're literally looking for the same thing up here because this is the direction you're going. And so then that's what you notice, and you keep seeing the same pattern. It's not that you're having the same pattern, you're looking for the same pattern. Make sense? I love these little distinctions, right? You keep looking for the same pattern. So my invitation to you, and this is what I share with everybody, instead of looking to fix what has happened, decide what you want to have happen. Instead of looking to fix what has already happened, decide what it is you want to have happen. And that means you move towards the desires, the things that you actually want in life. That would be an intention. Because again, goals, half the time, it's to try to get away from something. I've got a goal to make $1 million. Why? I don't want to be poor. I've got a goal to find the love of my life. Found her. Yes. Right? Why? I don't want to be lonely. This is what most of us were acting out of these things. Even look at New Year's resolutions. Do you make New Year's resolutions more often about things that you've never done or the things that you want to stop doing? Most of the time it's the things we're trying to stop. Okay, beginning of the year, I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to this and that. You're avoiding. And while there is a power to acknowledging what you don't want, to invest in it means there's not much to invest in what you do want. And so instead, start to shift that attention, that energy, that focus towards the intentionality of life. And this is what we were talking about last week, right? Investing in life. You invest into what you want, not what you don't want. Yeah.
Could you say that the way I see it, intentions are more from the heart and goals are more...
This could be true. But then we have to define heart and head, right? So what she said is, would I say or would we say that intentions are more from the heart and goals are more from the head? If we define the mind, the head, as being that which can only see reflectively, which is true, right? Our brain can only look backwards. It can only look at what has occurred and then imagine, create variations, decide what's possible as a difference, but it's still referencing always what has been. Our heart, on the other hand, is focused on this moment right now. It's based on our feeling states, our emotions, right? And certain energetics and vibrations that we may not be able to explain. The brain also has some of those. But the heart is present, which means it's looking at what is the possibility of this moment's decision. And is it moving me in a way that feels open and expansive, or is it contracting me down? Your body and your sensations will give you amazing guidance. From that, you might even look at the most simple possible intention you could have. Do I want to expand or do I want to contract? Right? And then that becomes an intentionality. Now, the guidance of your heart, what it tells you to do, I would call that your intuition. Right? But the intention is why. And again, maybe to expand or to contract, to open or to close. Now, it's a beautiful analogy actually using the heart, because we look at the actual organ. What does it do naturally? Both of them. It's opening, closing, opening, closing. It's a pump. This also tells us something about life, that even when we have the strongest of intentions, the greatest of clarity, that it doesn't mean it's just going to be a straight path. There will be these moments of dips and valleys and ups and downs. But if you have a strong enough intention, then that keeps you on course. If you have no intention, then what you do is you go into, let's say you're going into a grocery store and you're hungry, right? So your goal is you're like, I just want to get some food. And you walk in there, well, now there's all this food, so many options and choices, and you die because you can't make a choice. There's too many. or you just get overwhelmed. Now let's say you go in there and you're like, I want clearly the intention of food that's going to nourish me, that's fresh, that's not been changed, not this, whatever decision you make. Or maybe you're really in the mood for pizza. You're not even going to go to the grocery store. You're going to the pizza place, right? When you have intention, it cuts things short into very direct paths. It allows you to, even if there is something that moves you out of where you're headed, it lets you correct course. I think of maybe the sailors of old, like before we had GPS and all this stuff, and they were following the stars. Okay? And all they had to do was go, okay, we don't know what the wind's doing, we don't know what the waves are doing, we don't know where our coordinates are, but we know where that star is, and it's there. We're going to keep aligned to that. And every time it went off, well, just turn the rudder, move it back, move it back. And I think this is the intention, is we need to find the star for our lives, the thing that shines bright ahead of us, not behind. Because the current's only going to take you one way. So how do we figure out our intentions? Maybe that's the next question, right? If we start to define that goals tend to be the direction, the something that we can kind of say, okay, that's where I'm headed. But then we look at, why do I want that? And I think intentions, as we just spoke about with the heart, are always going to be the same thing, a feeling that you're seeking. Every single time. Your intention for whatever you want, whether it's a possession, an experience, a connection, will always be because of the feeling you're after with that. When you realize that, it's much easier to let go of the goal and embrace the intention. Because you realize that that intention can be fulfilled not just by that one thing. How many of you gotten stuck where you were like, no, I can't be happy until this happens? I'll give you an easy one that I'm sure most of us can relate to. Maybe a good friend or even a partner that you separated from, or a parent or somebody close to you hurt you in some way, or never recognized something that you wanted them to recognize, or didn't say the words you would wish them to say. And then you go for so many years of your life going like, nobody loves me, nobody cares, nobody supports me. And people are all like, well, what do you need? I'm here for you, I'm here for you. No, not you, that person. Because you made it a goal, not an intention. Unconsciously, you said, my goal is to get that person to come and apologize, face up, support, do what I wanted them to do. Or that situation to be the way I wanted it to be. And you made it an unconscious goal. And you forgot why. And the why might have been simply to have support, to feel supported. And it was surrounding you and you were dismissing it. So when you realize that the goal is only something to give you a little bit of direction, and then you let it go and you remember and nurture the intention, then you allow every opportunity for that intention to present itself to you instead of dismissing it. This, by the way, is one of the functions of our mind. It's a beautiful thing, right? Our mind is built to help you survive. And so whatever you make significant in your life, that you decide by your focus and repetitive thinking, your mind will assume, ooh, that's for our survival. It must be. I don't know why they would sit and dwell on it for so long, right? That's also why when we dwell on a person or a job we really want or anything that we really desire, even if it's like a chocolate cake, right? And you sit there and you get on it, that at some point you're like, it's like for death, I need that cake, right? Because you've told your mind it's so significant. So once you've told your mind it's significant, then what it starts to do is it says, okay, I'm going to look for every possibility of that thing you are so focused on, and everything else I'm going to filter out of your life so it doesn't distract you. Now let's go back to what I was sharing earlier. Tends to be the unconscious focus of most of us. What we're avoiding. And because what we're avoiding tends to be the thing that we're focused so much on, our brain goes, oh, that must be significant to our survival. And it starts to focus only on possibilities of that to avoid them. But it also dismisses, ignores, filters out all the other possibilities so that you're not distracted by the things you might actually want. And that's why people, why people end up going through life being like, no, nothing ever comes through for me. Everything's always doing the same thing. I always lose. I never win. Because they have filtered out those possibilities. Even when we look back, and I'll use a relationship again. If we look back on a bad relationship or one that ended badly, most of the time we're focused on why it ended badly. And we go, yeah, they were always like this and they were always like this. But if you simply ask yourself a question, and it's a simple question, and it's not going to be the one of like, what was good in that relationship? It's, why did you get into the relationship? Because that one tricks the mind a little bit, right? If I say what was good, you're like, nothing. It was all bad. I was just blinded. No, there must have been something. Otherwise, you never would have been in it. And there must have been something you got out of it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have stayed in it so long. Right? It doesn't mean that thing you got out was positive or negative, but you chose it. And when we start to realize that there's so many more things that we're maybe filtering or not noticing, then we also might start to realize so many possibilities we haven't seen yet, unless we start to open with an intention and a curiosity for what's possible, instead of just the one goal. A lot of times we don't even know who we are. So how are we supposed to know what we want? Right? And this is a very true statement. A lot of us, we haven't figured out who we are. I think a lot of times we're looking for somebody else to tell us who we are, some experience to tell us who we are. As if we were just put in a room and we were given a whole bunch of options, and depending on what we do and how the result is, that will tell us who we are. How we scored on an exam, how we did in a relationship, how we do at work, in the evaluations, then we'll find out who we are. I'll give you guys another invitation in this. Instead of trying to figure out who you are, what if you just decided who you want to be? Who do you want to be? Because again, that's the beauty of an intention. Who you are is you trying to meet a goal of proving yourself to a society that has arbitrarily decided this is what you should be. An intention is to say, I'm going to be this in that society regardless. I can use my wife as a beautiful example. When we first started dating, maybe a year or two in, we went to the U.S. and it was our first time in the U.S. Now in the U.S., I grew up in the U.S., and you kind of follow certain rules, mostly out of fear. And we're walking along, we're on the sidewalk, I think it was in a courtyard, and we're going, and she just starts cutting across the grass. And I was like, honey, you get off the grass, you can't be on the grass. She's like, why, it's much shorter. I'm like, you can't do that. You should follow the rules. And I'm going way around. Oh, okay, well, I'll meet you over there, right? But she was much happier. She just started dancing on the grass instead, right? Because she set her own, and she's like, well, I want to do this way. And it wasn't that there was a sign there that said, don't go on the grass. That would have been different. That's disrespectful. But it was just the unconscious conditioning of a goal that said, no, I have to meet the etiquette here. You're not supposed to go, because they put a concrete thing here for me to go walk on. I'm not supposed to go across that. I remember when I visited her city in Germany, and we went with a horse and carriage, actually. It was really beautiful. And then we went on the horse and carriage right into this grassy knoll and like just parked. And I'm like, this isn't our grass. Like, you got a whole horse and a carriage, and the horse is peeing now. Nobody was bothered. We get to set an intention of who we want to be, how we want to be. Now, with a respect and a consideration of those around us, but not blindly. To understand why something's going on. This actually, I will admit, is one of my greatest frustrations with certain rules and laws within our world. They've been blindly set, and especially years past, that don't reflect anymore, and yet we still follow them. Because the intention was lost, and instead we're stuck to the goal, which was order. But how that order is set is different now. So can we start to question all of these goals that have been created for us and from us, and instead look at what is the intention? And it, again, will always come down to a feeling that you desire. Can you give yourself permission to have that? Can you say to yourself, I'm worthy, I deserve to have this feeling? Now you might think to yourself, well, what if I just want to have a hedonistic life and go and be carnal with all sorts of people? Okay, why? See, that was a goal. That wasn't an intention. Why? Well, I want to feel loved. Oh, is that the only way? Well, no. Right? Because we come up with extremes and we go, well, you can't just decide what you want to feel and go and just feel it just willy-nilly. Why not? It depends on how you do it. That you can't do in any possible way, because there is a consideration of society and other people and your own self-health, right? But you can get clear about the intention. If you want to just be happy, be happy. I'm going to give you two examples of what I mean by that, where it might seem difficult to convince yourself that you have permission to just be intentional with your feelings. Let's say that, I'll give you an example, a personal one actually. So it's happened a few times, but more recently, I was in our kitchen, and I was about to cut a watermelon. I knew she was going to start laughing. Christina was upstairs. It's in the morning. We always have a little bit of watermelon. And so I got the watermelon from our kitchen table. I put it up on the counter, kind of looked at it for a moment because it looked like it was rolling a little, but then it seemed still. And I turned to get something else, falls on the ground, cracks open, big mess. For me, a little voice in my head was like, I wasted the watermelon. I can't give this to my wife who I love, and I was so excited to do this. And I was all upset with myself because I had set a goal. The goal was, I can only be happy when I get to provide for my wife. Right? And then that got ruined, and so I was like, I'm a failure. The next thing I know, I see Christina crouching on the stairwells, buckled over with laughter. Like, couldn't stop herself. I'm looking at her, I'm like, she's laughing at me because I'm a failure. No. She's just, she finds it funny. And there was a thing in my mind, it was very interesting. There was a conversation, almost an argument in my mind that was like, I could be happy right now too. I could choose to be happy. And then another voice was like, no, you can't. You were a failure, remember? Oh, yeah, that's right. And that's the difficulty. We let the stories of our past, we let the conditioning, we let all the laws internally dictate what we choose. When actually, in that moment, you can just choose. And I finally did at some point, because it was funny. I'll give you a different example. This one's a little harder to swallow. Let's say that a loved one has passed. And maybe it was sudden. And I've worked actually with a lot of clients where this has been the case, where they're grieving. But the thing that I hear the most from grieving relatives or people isn't how much they're suffering because of the loss. It's the overwhelm of expectation and responsibility they feel to take care of everyone else while they're actually, in that moment, feeling okay. And the overwhelm of feeling like, it's not okay that I feel okay. I should be sad. Why am I not sad? Now, possibly they're in shock. Possibly they haven't gotten to that place, and that's fine. But they start to feel stressed because everybody else is going, I'm so sorry for you. And they're like, yes, I know I'm supposed to be sad right now. I'm sorry too, thank you. But they can decide. And a lot of times our heart has already decided it's made peace with something. But our mind has not. It's stuck on the supposed to, the goal. So ask yourselves in your own lives, how often has there been a goal, sometimes stated, sometimes unconscious, that's been keeping you in the same place? Keeping you overwhelmed or on a path that actually maybe wasn't even the one you wanted or want anymore? How many of you started reading a book, you were really excited at the beginning, and you read like a couple chapters in, you're like, this is so boring. But you kept reading. You're like, I have to finish it. I started, I have to finish. And you'll justify it. You'll be like, maybe it'll change. Maybe it'll get good somewhere. You know, a book, a TV series, something. And then by the end, you're like, well, that was a waste. You can choose if you decide and understand the intention. Why did you start reading the book? Maybe to learn something. Are you learning anything? No, stop reading the book. Open to a new possibility. Now, with that said, in everything in life, we have to give it a certain container of time, right? We don't want to quit because of discomfort. That's different. But if you have clarity, make the bold move to shift. Just to ground that in a little bit, I'll use relationship again because I see that happen a lot. People get into a relationship, they go through the honeymoon phase, and then there's the phase, I don't call it the phase where you start hating each other, but it's a phase where the mask drops. And something changes. And what you thought you got into isn't what you got into. And now you're shocked. So it's one of my favorite lines when people come with couples coaching. They're like, well, it was great at the beginning, but then they changed. Yes, we do that. But guess what? They didn't change. They dropped the mask and the walls and the barriers. They became vulnerable with you, started to show them their true self. Because at the beginning, they probably weren't. How many of us really show our true selves at the beginning? No, we're trying to make it through the interview, right? Like, yes, I got the job. Okay, I'm in. And then, you know, same probably actually with a job, you know. You pass the interview by kind of smiling when you think you need to smile, and Then you go in there and you don't really do the work you're supposed to do anymore. Now, by the way, when it comes to relationships or work or anything in life, and this is what investing in life last week was all about, you don't get to quit once you got there. That's when you get to do the most work of cultivating and keeping, maintaining what you want in life. Because everything is a cultivation. You're either cultivating it towards its doom unconsciously or you're cultivating it towards its success consciously. So in relationship, it's by continuing to do the habits and patterns that bring you towards the best part of that relation. Right? You don't quit once you get there. Giving enough of a container of time to actually get clarity. Most of the time, we quit as soon as there's discomfort and we go, wait, no, I want something else that I didn't have to cultivate, but that I can just pick off the shelf and it's perfect. Right? We're often looking for perfection. We're looking for the ideal partner, the ideal job, the ideal whatever, interaction. But that's not how life is. Life is a cultivation because by cultivating it, you create the ideal. And you create foundation along the way. Now, foundation, I think, is a big piece of alignment. Because what tends to happen, because you even said it, like what if you go full force into something and it was the wrong choice and it all falls apart? Right? It can only all fall apart if you had nothing that you were building slowly towards it. Right? If you bring, I'll use construction as an example. If you come and you bring a whole house fabricated, right? It's already done, and you bring it over here and you put it in, and then as soon as it's there, like a week later, because of the mold and the humidity here, it's completely ruined. Well, now you can't do anything. You lost the whole house. Or you come and you start putting some bricks, and you start there. This is cultivating piece by piece our lives. And in each piece, and that cultivation happens over time, it takes time to build this whole thing out, you're getting clarity. And you might get halfway up a wall and realize, oh, it's not actually the path I wanted to go. That's not the design that I wanted for my life. Okay, no worries. I only lost this much. Not even lost, you learned. So this is that difference. Alignment isn't something that was set before us by some holy entity, right? Alignment is, are you finding clarity in every moment? And is that clarity matching, and this is maybe a little more practical, to your values, to your desires, and to how you feel about it? In goals, we have this formula of, okay, how do we set that up so that we can measure it and this and that? And that's because a goal, again, is a destination, and you're trying to measure out how well you're on that track. Intentions, as we've been talking about, are about feelings. It's a feeling that you're seeking. And so it's a very easy thing to measure. Are you feeling it or not? So simple. Are you feeling it or not? Right? Now, when you're not, you're out of alignment. Whoop. Shift. Figure out what gets me back into that feeling state by choice. It's kind of like when we're meditating, you know, there's always this instruction that says, if you notice that you've wandered off, come back to your breath. The breath is always there in one place, right? And it's consistent. So is your intention, if you keep it consistent. But again, our intention is a tricky one because sometimes our intention has two ways that it can face. What we want, what we don't want. Every time we're going towards what we don't want, we're moving away from what we want. Every time we're going towards what we do want, we're moving away from what we don't want. But we tend to think in this some weird logic in our mind, well, if I focus on what I don't want and I avoid it and I control it, then I'll make sure I don't get that. Nope, doesn't work that way. You have to focus on what you do want. It's like scales of measurement, right? You ever see these old balancing scales? If you were focused and putting more attention and energy onto the scale of what you don't want, that's the one that gets heavier. But if you get all of it over here on this scale, this one gets more of the energy. You know, maybe your intention is you want to be a millionaire, but that's not really the intention. The intention was you want to give money to those who need it. And then we dig even deeper. Why do you want to do that? Well, because they deserve it. And I just want to, okay, well then, you want to help people. Go help that old lady across the street. Go help them build that thing over there. Go do this. No, it's not the same. I want to do it this way. Why do you want to do it that way? Goal, right? Well, because I would feel important then. Oh, you want to feel significant. Always comes back to a feeling. Every single time. And feeling significant, feeling recognized, there's nothing wrong with that. Just own it. Because once you do, then you can find the possibilities and the healthy ways to achieve it. Or just to choose it. Again, that's the power really behind realizing that all our intentions are feelings. is that nobody has to approve you to feel it. Nobody is going to give it to you. You give yourself permission to have it in any moment, whenever you decide. You can simply go, oh, I'm going to feel significant right now. I'm going to feel happy right now. One of the core things that most of us want to feel is safety. And it's also one of the core motivators of why we do a bunch of stuff to avoid things that we don't feel safe with, right? So if you want to feel safe, what ways can you create environments, interactions, and self-care that gives you safety? So you don't have to make a lot of money. You don't even have to be financially secure. You just have to know that you're in a safe place. And then once you're there, this is the beauty of it, when you start to be in that energy of what you want, that feeling of what you want, and you do it consistently, the same thing happens in the brain. The brain's like, oh, we're consistently in this feeling of safety, not the searching for safety, not the avoidance of fear, but in the feeling of safety, and we're there a lot. Ooh, that must be significant to our survival. I will look for more opportunities to feel safe. And all of a sudden your whole world and reality starts to change, and it shows you at least, places and ways of feeling safe. And it seems like everything changed, right? And that might be opportunities for income that allows you to do different things and this and that. But it's a real subtle distinction. Because we make it about, once I have that income, then I'll be safe. Then the seed that you're planting is, I'm afraid I'm not, I'm afraid I'm not, I'm afraid I'm not, I'm afraid I'm not. And then you're hoping that when the tree grows that it's going to be safety. Nope. It's going to be, I'm afraid I'm not. That's the fruit that you're bearing. That makes sense? This is a big, big concept. Christina and I keep talking about this. The seeds that you plant is the fruits that you bear, right? And that means if you plant an apple seed, what kind of fruit are you going to get? Apples, right? So why do we plant an apple seed? And that apple seed might be like, oh, I want to feel joy, I want to feel safety. And so you planted a joy seed and a safety seed. But then our minds get involved. We're like, but what if it comes up different? What if it's this other thing? Oh, let me go try to just find a tree that already grew that's joy and safety. No, not going to work. What you do is you stay consistent with a faith, you mentioned that, with trust that if you continue to nurture that seed of joy, which means you continue to feel joy, you choose joy in your life, that it will continue to grow, and the only thing it can grow into is joy, because it was a seed of joy. When you can realize that, then it gives you the confidence to stop abandoning the seeds of your desires and going towards the goals. The goal often is the final result, the outcome that you're looking for, right? And that's what a goal is. It's a final outcome of something. But what we're mostly trying to do is we're trying to skip the steps to get to that outcome, right? We're hoping we can just get it in its perfect form already there. And if it's not the perfect form, then we take that seed, let's say it was an apple, but it came out and it looks a little bit rotten and stuff. What we normally do in life, we're like, oh, shoot, I wanted a nicer apple. Let me just rub it a little bit and shine it up and I'll put a little wax on it. And you see this in the grocery stores, right? But we look at the seeds of those same apples, and the reason they weren't shining on their own is because the seed wasn't pure. The seed already had distortion, right? And that's what we do sometimes in our own seeds. Without clarity of intention, we're putting a seed in with a little bit of doubt along with the joy. And then it grows like that. And so it's getting clear and consistent with your real intention, which is a feeling. And so for you, especially if it's safety, just keep looking for, where do I feel safe? Where do I feel safe? There will be a little bit whisper in your mind that will be like, yeah, but what about that place over there that doesn't feel safe? What about that person over there that doesn't feel safe? Don't invest in them. Don't put your energy there. Acknowledge. Go like, oh yeah, that dark alley doesn't look safe. I don't need to go there, so I'll go this way. So we've been talking about intention versus goals, and we start to look at this idea that our intentions are the seeds of the feelings that we desire in life. And all we have to do is continue to plant those seeds, continue to nurture the seeds that we've planted. And yes, some weeds might grow up and around it because of past conditioning. But you let that go, and as you let it go, and you acknowledge it, and then you focus in, you invest on this one seed, it will grow, and it's inevitable. It will grow into what the seed is. If the seed was joy, it will be joy. If it's safety, it will be safety. How do you stop planting the doubtful seeds, these other seeds, the weeds? One, we find some clarity about certain things, right? But we also start to think about, are we ever intentionally, consciously planting the weed seeds? No, right? Like you don't have your garden, and maybe you've been making some beautiful tomatoes and some cucumbers and some lettuce and stuff. You made this beautiful garden, very nutritious and nourishing to your life. You don't go out there and you're like, I'm going to take some daisywood and some other things and milkweed, and I'm going to just throw a couple of those seeds in there just to test it, right? To challenge it a little bit. Sometimes we actually do this a little bit. I see this in the biohacking field. People are like, oh, you got to force yourself into discomfort to get used to it. It's like, no, discomfort will find you. You don't have to put it there. Like, face it when it's there. You don't have to do something before. So, first step, we realize we're not actually casting those weeds. Conditioning, influence, how we allow those things to come in, that casts it, which most of the time is based on comparison. Comparison, I think, is the weed creator, right? Because you might be really happy, right? Actually, I'll tell you guys a little story. Can I tell you a story? I love sharing stories. This is one that I heard in somebody else's speech years ago. And it was the guy who was giving the speech. He was a fairly famous gentleman, and so he had a lot of money, and he used to have a big ego. And he's driving along the street one day, and he was in his convertible, and it's like all custom made and painted and all these things, and rolls up to a red light, stops, and this minibus, like a Volkswagen minibus, comes along, it's like on eco biofuel, and so it's like comes up. The guy kind of looks over, and he's like, and he kind of goes like this, like here, roll your window down. Person, rolls the window. It's not a button because it's a old thing. So they're like, right? They get the window down. The guy, being all cocky and arrogant, he's like, "Nice ride, ha! Did you just get out of bed?" His woman looked all disheveled. She's like, "Yeah, I did. I got bed in the back." Like, "Yeah, I just got out of bed." Green light. She goes. Guy sitting there, he's like, "She's got a bed in her car? I need a bed in my car. I'm going to get a bed in my car." So, with all his money, all his, ability, he goes to a mechanic shop, and he's like, "I want you to put a bed in this car." Mechanic's like, but that's a convertible, and it's like tiny. It's even just a 2-seater. There's no room. I will pay you whatever you put a bed in this car. Okay. Mechanic works some magic. He actually gets his bed as part of the convertible piece, and it's like nice little fold-out bed. The guy gets back in his car. This is like weeks later. He's like, "I gotta go find that stupid band. I gotta find that girl, show her, like, now I can be happy." Because he was miserable those 2 weeks waiting till he could achieve having a bed in his car. He gets back in, and he's going, he's looking. Finally sees in this empty parking lot. There it is. Underneath the street lamp. It's just beginning to be evening. Ha! Goes down, parks next door. Ha, ha, ha. Finally, she comes. She opens the side door. It's like, she's in a towel. She's all wet. She's like, "What?" He's like, "I got a bed in mine too." "You got me out of the shower to tell me that? You have a shower?" No matter what, when we are comparing, we will always steal, take away from ourselves the happiness, the joy, the feeling that we already had. Because all of a sudden we look at somebody else and we're like, "Well, why don't I have that?" Because you never cultivated it. Don't worry about it. You didn't choose it. Choose it now. Be inspired by that. Instead of looking with a scarcity mindset and going, "Oh, they're happy. Why can't I be happy? What do they have that made them happy? Oh, goals. Let me go set those same goals. Then maybe I'll be happy." At some point along the way, they gave themselves permission to be happy. It didn't matter what they had or what they had achieved. You can do the same. So I think that is the key. The weeds are comparison. It's the moment we look outside of us and look for the power to have the feeling outside of us. And we compare, like, "Well, that person got it, or that person, they must have something more than me, so I need to go seek it." No. It's just a choice. You can make it internally any moment. Now, you have to do it consistently, because unfortunately, we've all grown up in the conditioning of a society that is external. And we have to fight that conditioning, and that means you have to consistently keep reminding yourself, "I choose. I choose. I choose who I want to be. I choose how I want to feel. I choose what I want to do. How I want to affect the world around me and myself. I choose." And you keep doing that until at some point it becomes unconscious and automatic. Then the comparison comes along and somebody shows up and they have more than you, and you're like, great, good for you. I'm happy too. Right? Because there's enough of happiness to go around. That's abundant. We've been talking about intentions versus goals. And first we set out to define what that meant, and we started to look at the idea that a goal is the final outcome. It's the destination that we might orient our direction in. But most of the time, unfortunately, we forget about the intention of why we decided that was the goal, why we wanted to move in that direction. And as we go along that goal, we get so lost and attached to it that the intention completely goes away, and we find ourselves not feeling the thing that we wanted to feel even when we achieve the goal. So instead, can we let the goal give us a direction and then let it go? Now all you have to do is with that goal, you plant a seed and you say, oh, why did I want that goal? Oh, to be happy. Okay, let me plant a seed of happiness. And let me now nurture that seed consistently with every single step. Let me intentionally and consciously look at every opportunity in my life and where I could decide to be happy. Decide that this is okay. Notice, I'm saying decide and choose. Not settle for, not convince yourself, not bypass. Those are very different things. But decide to be happy. Give yourself permission. And as you do that, you are setting those intentions, and you can set that at any moment in any given circumstance. You can decide. Look at some of these crazy situations people have been in. If I look at Nelson Mandela, right? Or other people like this who have gone through great struggles, and then they decided, no, I'm going to live my life like this. And because of it, they succeeded greatly in their own lives and how they affected others. And so I invite you all to simply give yourself permission to feel the things that you feel. And in so doing, then act from those feelings, and that resonance will bring more opportunities. And as long as you're not taking from anybody else, which you wouldn't be because you're not comparing, right? But you're living your happiness, and in it you might be a contagion for other people's permission to be happy as well. Thank you.